Hi, welcome to the latest episode of the Wellbeing Show. I've got a return guest. Yeah, some people do come back even after meeting me once. So, glutton for punishment, Mr. Faust Ruggiero. I'm sure I got that wrong, but he'll tell me.
Ruggiero, but you're close.
Ruggiero. Sort of like, nah. And I'm really sort of grateful to Pace because I did that usual idiotic thing of getting the time zones wrong. And there's a few weeks between the UK and the US where Faust is, where we're on sort of the clocks have gone back in the UK and they haven't quite gone back in the US yet, and they will do in a week. And then I can't figure it all out. It's just like I need somebody to figure my life out for me because I am obviously incapable. But there you go. We'll get into the show in just a second. As you know, it's a pre-recorded show, even though it seems live. So please don't call me if you're watching it or even Boused. You might annoy us in the middle of something that we're doing. But do send a message to me on WhatsApp 07 506 319 745. That's enough for me. How you doing, Faust?
I am doing well, Noel. It's really nice to be back with you again.
Yeah, same here. I'm always like catching up with people that I've met before. Where are you based again in the US?
I'm in Eastern Pennsylvania, about an hour and a half from either Philadelphia or New York.
Great. And how is it over there at the moment?
Today it's about 55 degrees, and we're kind of holding there, but I'm waiting for those days when, the polar bears are in the backyard.
Yeah, they'll soon come. Apparently they're on their way. They're like, and how are things in general in the US? We get sort of strange news and stuff like that. And
It's all probably accurate, whatever you're
is
getting,
it?
It's there's strange times, put it that way.
Yeah, it does seem that way.
Everyone has an opinion and none of them seem to be very happy. So say we'll put it there.
Yeah, yeah. You're okay though, and your family and everybody?
We're good. Thanks for asking.
Great, great. And the build up, of course, to Thanksgiving and Christmas. And have you put away the millions that you need to feed people during that period of
I
time?
run away at this.
Very wise.
That's my gift to everyone. He's gone.
Yeah. Doesn't the story of Thanksgiving come from somewhere around by you?
Yes, in this country, the settlers, the pilgrims did that,
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sort of Liberty
For
Bell and all that sort of stuff, isn't
yeah,
it? Yeah. Okay. So is that where you grew up? You were born and brought up around that area or?
I was, yes. Right in this area. I was born one town away and have lived in this area all my life. Yep.
Right. And that your family were settled in the US for some time, or were they immigrant family? And
Yeah, I mean, from Italy. Uh, my father's people were from Rome. My mother's from Naples,
okay.
and then a lot of people from the town. The town is Roseto, and there is a town in Italy called Roseto Valfatore, Italy.
Yeah.
So they named it the town that we grew up in, which was almost all Italian at that time.
Right.
After the parent town there.
Yeah. And how far are you from like New York and places like that?
I can get into Manhattan on a good day in about an hour and a half.
Yeah, I thought it's quite close, isn't it? Because
Yeah, Philadelphia about the same
sort of
thing. Like a
put in.
triangle.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a large Italian community there then, so that you're part of a large Italian diaspora.
Was yeah, things are changing now. Like everywhere else, there's a lot of different folks have moved in. The old people have passed, and other people are coming in. But it's still a nice place to live.
And you had, I guess, a largish Italian style family, lots of kids.
All that kind of stuff. Yeah, you didn't knock on the door. You walked in and hit the refrigerator. You did. You're supposed to, I think.
Yeah, no, it just helped yourself to food. That was what happened in my family. Sort of Irish Catholic. It was just, you didn't know where the front door was, to be honest. I don't think it existed.
Exactly. You came in and whoever was there sat down to dinner, and it's still I had an aunt that passed away. She was 103, and she was still serving breakfast for all the nieces and nephews until she was about 100. So it's that family, that loving family thing that it was very healthy, a very nice way to live. You
I
always
just
had,
seem to remember that we had much more of a, as well as a network of people, if you like.
yeah.
That it was much more interconnected, and I was myself and my brother. We were sort of quite wild, quite feral in some ways, I think.
I remember.
And we sort of we thought we were off on our own all the time, but it's only when I was an adult I realized that all the neighbors were looking out for us.
Well, that's what we always said. We'd come home and my father would say, "Oh, so how was whatever we did?" And we thought we had the secret covered. And no, I mean, by the time we got home, this neighbor called and that one called, and this could be blocks away from the house. It didn't matter. Everyone knew everyone. So, and I think that was the conspiracy. They said, "Well, we'll all call and we'll tell you where your kids are. Your kids are down here. We saw them at the park, whatever."
And just making sure you're okay and that sort of looking in, checking in on things.
Right.
Is that still sort of around your neighborhood a bit like that, or has that
I don't
changed?
think as much now as it was then.
Right.
Again, all different kind of folks are in. It's sign of the times where you have fragmented families and you have all different types of folks coming from all different types of places. So it's not like it was. It still my generation. It's still there, and some of the our children, but for the most part, not so much. Plus, as opposed to everyone staying here, which is what we did.
Yeah.
Now the world opened up, so
Yeah.
kids graduate, they go to college, and they go get a job in another state,
Yeah.
another country, maybe.
Yeah. And you sort of enjoyed school and things like that, and I guess it was a sort of good experience, or
Yeah, for the most part, it was just your
yeah,
average typical stuff. Yeah.
yeah. And what did you do at school? What was your sort of career? Give us some sense of what that journey
Well,
was.
when I was a kid, I was the one everybody came to talk to, so to speak. I was a listener, so I just gradually gravitated into psychology, and that's
Yeah.
what I studied for 6.5 years at college.
And you did up to doctorate level, postdoctoral?
I have a master's degree and some
Yeah.
doctoral work.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then what? You went into clinical practice, I guess, sort of.
Went to private practice, and that was almost it is now. It's 1979. I came out of school. By 89, I started private practice. I'd worked in clinics in a prison in various places. And then at 89, went into private practice. So,
Yeah.
it's about 45 years.
Yeah. And you said psychology. So I mean, I don't know if people do understand the differences or they're that necessary, but we've got terms like psychology, psychotherapy, psychiatry. What sort of, where do you place yourself within all of that?
What I do is called clinical psychology, which is essentially providing counseling services, diagnostic counseling, those types of things, evaluations,
Right. But
things.
does that come from the sort of clinical thing?
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah. And otherwise, what other types of psychology are there?
Well,
Like,
you could be a psychiatrist. That's really a psychologist with a medical degree also, so
okay.
they're going to prescribe medicine.
Yeah.
You could be a research psychologist where you're doing nothing but research. There's developmental psychology geared towards children, those types of things.
Yeah.
Now, so many branches, neuropsychology, which is studying how the neurology in the brain works and applies
Yeah.
to thought and
Yeah.
behaviors, all different branches.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's quite well established in the US, isn't it? There's a lot of respect for the field.
Yes, very much so. And we'll see how it goes. Things are changing now. A lot of it's being
Right.
done online, so we're going to see how that pans out over time. I'm not a big fan. Maybe I'll work with people online, but I'm still the old school, come to the office and let's sit down and I can see the whole person kind of a thing.
So tell us about that in terms of what your thinking is around those types of issues, apart from age. I mean, with get set in our ways, but what's your thinking around that?
Well, my most important point is that everything we do be client-centered, be patient-centered. That's why I say the movement to online counseling is a product. It really took off during the pandemic when people
Yeah.
couldn't get out. But that's really more counselor centered than it is client centered. You can't see the person. You can't give them a hug if they need. You can't, their body language,
Yeah.
that intimacy of the office. That's all lost. And now you're counting as you and I are talking. I could have my cell phone here. I could have a distraction, and it's out of the range of the camera. You can't see it. Counselors are watching texts, when they're coming in.
Mm,
You might be doing laundry over there or out in the backyard doing something, and you say, okay, I've got at 3 o'clock, I got to get in and
mm.
so you're not geared into the office structure, into that whole mindset for counseling. So maybe this, generation of counselors will master that. I don't
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
But it's a different way to do things. So it's kind of watered down. We'll see more people get into therapy because it's accessible.
Yeah.
But how good it is, I'm not so sure. And how long insurance companies are going to want to give lots of money to people who no longer have to pay office bills and staff and all those kinds of things that went into it. As this goes on, it'll change, and
Yeah.
we'll see.
I mean, it's been interesting over here. We've been seeing the addition in training, I think, of specifically online skills so that people
Yeah.
can discuss these issues. Discuss issues about the etiquette. I know from my own embarrassment, I've had to stumble into it, and I once got distracted by my phone in a session, and then a client very courageously said, "You're looking at your phone. Can you not do that?" And I was just absolutely unconsciously looking at the phone. And we discussed that, and we discussed my sort of lapse in judgment and that and what that was about. We repaired that rupture, but it was there. It was definitely
Well, and we need to train people. If we're going to go do this online, then we really have to do what we did traditionally now applied to online counseling. We have to now be able to, have classes in this. How do we
there.
do this? What are the right ways to do it? What are, let's train people to do this appropriately.
Yeah.
Cell phones are an addiction. We know this. So
Mhm.
if that doesn't mean the counselor doesn't have one. So the
Yeah.
counselor may sit down, they're counseling someone and then they're not answering the phone, but every now and then you see this go on when the little beep or little tone goes off.
Hmm.
And if I'm talking to you or you're talking to me, and I do one of these, and the communicative process is broken for it. There's a pause
Yeah.
in that, and
Yeah, well,
people,
there's an interruption for sure,
yeah, yeah.
definitely. I mean, I guess it's here to stay, and we have to look at it in terms of, how it's going to be used and all of that.
And we have, if it's going to be here, then we have to embrace it, and we have to be able to say, okay, since it's here, then let's provide the training
Yeah,
so we don't have people going in blind to do this.
yeah,
Uh, we have all different levels, people that are, licensed psychologists, people have been doing what I've been doing for years, and we have people who come in with a coach's certificate that they took for, 6 weeks or
yeah,
2 months or whatever, and they're doing the counseling. We're really not we're doing them a disservice. We need to say, you know what? Let's train to do this. At least train in the approaches so that you know how you want to deal with your people, because it's kind of like you're one removed from the office here. You and I, we are as we all always say across the pond from each other.
yeah.
And I have people that I counsel in different countries,
See you, right.
yeah, and I'll say, geez, I'd love to work with you. I've seen your work, and can I work with you? And once we get the time zones going, we're doing that, but
Don't talk to me about time zones, Faust.
that was a little zinger. I thought you
I
didn't catch
saw that. I saw that. I was like, yeah, you got me.
it.
So tell me about in terms of your career, when you are sort of thinking about it, you might have some times when you sort of, what would be the sort of narrative you would say about your career so far? It's obviously still ongoing. Do you have a story about how you understand it, how it's grown and developed?
Oh, sure. People ask, why did you get into this? And I said, well,
Yes. Why
some
did you
people,
get
some
into this?
people say, well, I'm going to try that or I'll choose this. This chose me
Did it?
for years ago. That this was, I'm the guy that loves being in service of other people. I love to help
Right.
people. I love to listen to them. Uh, I don't solve their problems. I just help them get there, give them the skills they need to do all those things. And I've always loved it. Um, so I did that in a number of settings, and then went private practice and did that. I said over 40 years. I've uh, counseled in prisons. I do employee assistance programs and for major corporations. So it's I've been able to spread out and do a lot of different things.
Hmm.
And then when I was 2017, 16, I said I think I want to write a book. So I took a year off and I studied the publishing industry, so I knew what it was like, and I was going to do the right things when I get there. 2019, we published the first book, and
Hmm.
uh, it took off since there. We're six deep with a seventh in development and planning a documentary on trauma, on the Las Vegas
Wow.
shootings here in
Yeah. Yeah.
United States. We had a fellow who carried people out of there for 6, 7 hours, 8 hours, whatever it was, and then went into PTSD himself over it,
Of course. Yeah.
and uh, came through it. Is now uh, talking to people across the nation. So we're working on a documentary possibly
Wow.
on that event. So, it's not just counseling, it's branching out to so many other service areas. So, I keep myself really uh, tuned into things, and I like it that way.
And yeah, I mean, you're that sort of person. You don't like to be sort of necessarily labeled. It's
Right.
you're interested in what you're interested in, and that
Mhm.
dynamically changes over time.
Right.
It sounds very much like you're committed to the field, as it were. You're a healer. That's what you are. And then you follow those interests, right?
Exactly. And that, and people look, I get this all the time, how do you do this? How do you separate the work from, I said, well, it's not, I don't have that.
Yeah.
It's all the same to me.
Yeah, no, I get that.
If you're really, uh, empathetic about people's lives and you really love them, it's all the time. So it's not something I have to shut off, and it's not something that wears me down. I'm 70 at this point, and I'm still doing all this stuff, and I'm still energized from it. So it doesn't tear you apart if you learn how to balance your life.
And I'm going to come back to that sort of thing. I mean, there's interesting questions I think sometimes people have about private and professional life of therapists. I'll come
Mhm.
to that in a second. But a question that sometimes people have asked of me, and I'm interested in your response is, don't you ever get bored of people, Noel? Don't you ever get bored of listening to people?
No, what happens with people is that in this profession, you can burn out. You can get to the point where you say, okay, they're coming again, or Monday's coming and I'm going to start counseling. And I don't have any of that. I don't invest that way. When a person walks into my office, I absolutely love that person. I love spending time with them. Just as we're doing right now. Here we are, we're doing this, and I'm over 600 interviews in since I started this, and people say, "Aren't you getting tired of these interviews?" I said, no, it's just part of my day. I know today I'm doing this interview. I'm loving it. I'm going to have a great time. I counseled a bit this morning. I'm going to start in another hour and a half. I'll start counseling again and I'll go till about 7:15, 7:30 tonight.
Yeah,
Uh, and I've done that forever. Now I do it 4 days a week. I cut the schedule down a bit, so I can do these other things.
yeah,
It either it's a difference between a job and who you are. And
yeah.
and this is who I am.
Yes, no, I get that. It's clearly a vocation, but it's also a very core part of yourself that has grown over the
Very
years.
personal
Um,
part that I love.
Yeah, and there's another couple of questions coming to mind. I do want to get to your book, but I'm actually just
Mhm.
interested in this conversation, if that's all right.
Sure.
Um, so again, the question about, what would your family say about having a psychologist as a husband or a father, and what was that like for them, do you think? And how do you make that sort of do that thing? Because I think sometimes people think that if, like, certainly for me, I remember when I first qualified, let me introduce the question this way. When I first qualified, I remember people coming up to me and I'd say what I did for a living, and then they'd inevitably get into, well, I've never told anybody this. So I'd go, no, thanks. You're not going to tell me this.
Yeah. Yeah, people will say that if you don't preach to your family, if you don't come out as the counselor to them,
So
or as you have all the answers, or you treat them almost like a client, we have no problem with that. I just came home and I was husband, I was dad,
yeah,
and they never said to me, you're trying to treat me like that, or you're counseling me and don't, what I typically would say is, I'm here, you know my skills.
mm,
If you want to talk about it,
yeah,
great. If you don't, and you fall, you got to pick yourself up. And if you don't and you do well, then good for you.
yeah,
And to my wife, it's nothing, it's what I do.
yeah. I
It's,
guess that's the way she's also always known you.
yeah,
One always thinks about some of the sort of well-known people and whether they actually, were able to switch off really when they got
yeah.
home.
I always say when I leave the office and I close the door, that was left there. It's the same thing as if I have six clients back to back. I've seen the first one, now the second one comes in. I'm not thinking about the first one
No, I
anymore.
get that absolutely.
And so now when I close the door, it's me
Hmm.
going home. You know, it's not
I
the
think one of the
psychologist.
things that one of the real gifts I got from my training was learning how to be present in the moment.
Uh-huh.
And it's a really important skill in life, I think.
It's all about if you run your life that way,
Yeah.
then running your profession, running your business, your counseling service, is just it follows along. It's just another way that you deal with that. You stay in the moment. It's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
Uh,
And that
and
sort of mindful appreciation of the moment. For me, when I got into that, I realized it's not tiring actually at all. It's
it's
quite
not.
relaxing in many ways.
It very much is. You know, because it's not only about the profession. If you're a person who doesn't stay in the moment, your mind is always going
Yeah.
forward or back, and it's using up a lot of energy. Yeah, you know, you get anxious and you get depressed, or you get, you have difficulty with something in the past. If you can stay in the moment, in the present moment, now all your energy is going there. When the next person comes in, all you're doing is it's a repeat of that process.
Yeah.
And when you get home, the psychologist hat's off, the husband dad hat's on, and you're in that moment. And that's just the way it goes.
And you mentioned a couple of interesting words that I want to get your thoughts on. One is burnout and the other is trauma. And I think sometimes those are quite intimately connected for therapists and psychologists. So could you talk about those words a little bit?
Yeah, I remember being in graduate school and one of the professors saying that in his opinion, there were two types of people that get into psychology: those that want to fix the world and those that want to fix themselves. And so if you are that first person, you want to go out and help fix other people, help them fix themselves, and really, you don't burn out because if you're willing to, enhance your own skills, deal with your own demons, put tools in your life that work. I always tell people, we all had things in our lives that are concerning or traumatic or whatever they may be. If we settle those, we move forward, then we have so much more to give.
Hmm.
So, yeah, those are very, very intimately interwoven, those two.
And there's definitely something, isn't there? I mean, there's current research, always research emerging about sort of help seeking, but also help giving behavior and being sort of the volunteerism, helping people out who are less fortunate than ourselves. That actually we get that repaid to us psychologically many times over when we do that.
Well, that's the key. You're really, the person isn't paying you back. If you're looking for that, that's a problem. You really learn how to get that from the process that you're going through.
Mm.
That process is what really invigorates you.
Mm.
And I tell that to people in my teachings, in my book. In my books, I always say you need to work. We all need to work from the inside, not be looking for repayment or someone's notoriety and look at all that stuff. We need to get that inside. I remember no, my first book, I wrote this thing. I was so happy. I couldn't
Yeah.
wait to see it. Now, the author's copy comes in the mail. I open up, I look at it, and nothing. I felt nothing. And then I realized it was not about this. It was the process. It was
Yes.
me
Yeah. No, I
investing
get
in
that.
that whole thing. This is now done. Amazon and whoever else has it, and I'll do interviews and it'll go where it goes
Yeah.
in the Lord's hand, so to speak, and that's the end of the story. And so that's my thing is I'm not looking for repayment. I'm not looking for the notoriety. I'm looking for the process. I like the
Yeah.
work. I love it.
I mean, I think people who write books, there's something desperately wrong with them. I would go anywhere.
We're all nuts.
There's something nuts about it.
That's my professional psychological opinion. We're
That's
nuts.
that's right. I agree with you.
That's
Absolutely.
the diagnosis. Huh?
Which is a DSM-5 TR, wherever it was diagnosed.
Nuts.
That's right. It's in there somewhere. Um, sort of, there's a subsection for authors, which is dark, a dark subsection. Um, so you also mentioned a word, sort of getting out of the joking, but sort of thinking about this word trauma, and also I want to contextualize it in the context you gave us about living in a country where gun violence is sadly the norm and seems to be on the increase, and how you manage as a human being. So, first of all, tell us what trauma means to you as a psychologist.
Well, it's really an event, sometime something that hits you at one time, or sometime it's a process that continues. That really, I always say it comes in, takes over your entire world, and it creates a sense of victimization
Yeah.
where you now, the trauma's over and you are now continuing in the process. And you either operate as a victim because you believe it, your the way of thinking about yourself has changed. Your confidence and your faith has gone down. And for some people, it hits on a physical level, neurological level,
Mm.
where now you're even dealing with some brain alterations because of the trauma.
Mm. And what does it look like clinically when it presents?
Could it different for different people? Could be acute anxiety. They could go into depression where they just can't move. Um, for some people, it's anger.
Mm.
Some people manage it very well and clandestine behaviors come out.
Mm.
But for most people, it really ties back to the always to that past event.
Yeah.
And and your life changes at that point. So your perception of everything coming into your world changes because the trauma is something that's still directing the way you think and feel and behave.
And I guess most people do understand these days are aware enough to understand that event-based trauma makes sense. PTSD because you're a soldier or you're a first responder or you're in
Right.
a car crash and your life is under threat some way. But what do you mean by process-based sort of
It's interesting. People think when they say trauma, my God, I was I was there when the bullets were flying, and or that's event that hit. But how about a child brought up in a home
right?
where they're being abused routinely, maybe into teenage years,
Mhm.
and then they get out. Well, they've been traumatized all their life. Some of those might be severe, some of those would be very, very subtle, and made to look as though it was normal.
Yeah.
Uh, so now that person is also traumatized.
And I've heard that called various things, developmental trauma or complex PTSD.
Compound, yes. Mhm.
Yeah, what do you prefer? What's a sort of term that you would use? Or
I
does it
think the
not
one
matter?
we're seeing complex use a lot, which
Right.
really is that, that one that has the developmental, as you call it. I like that term also, where it progresses. For me, the best term is progressive trauma, where
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that really defines it. It really says something
Yeah, I
about it.
like that as well. That's a really nice way of saying it. Because it
Yeah,
has that sense which I have, which it isn't a thing. It's an evolving experience.
right.
Because
That's what
as long as the person has that adaptation, they can continue to adapt with it as their personality and life experience grows.
And what happens in both types, but particularly in the progressive trauma, is that an identity is built. This is who I am.
Yeah,
There was a study they did with, of all things, with cats, where one was the victim and the other one was the predator, so to
yeah,
speak. And the victim would always come in and just be doing this. So they were set up and ready. And when the predator saw it, attacked. But the other cat who wasn't coming in like that didn't get attacked. So
yeah.
what happens is the person takes on a victim identity
Mhm.
and assumes that things are going to happen and often doesn't realize they're putting themselves in position to continually be traumatized or at
And
least
do some
victim.
people adapt in a more sort of aggressive, maybe perpetrator role as
Yeah, protect
trauma
themselves.
victims?
Absolutely.
Right.
And that's where we see, things you might have sexual abuse and we say, well, they become sexual predators.
Yeah.
Well, you've learned it and you've normalized it, but for some people, it's also retribution,
And
misguided.
just so because it's in the news and stuff like this, do you make a distinction between, say, somebody who has compulsive sexual behavior and somebody who's a predator? I guess you do.
You have to, yes.
Yeah.
Compulsive sexual behavior may be pornography and
Right.
sexual intercourse, those things that you seek out that are things that are accepted versus the predators that are hurting people. There oftentimes are, in their definition is abuse, is anger, is to hurt someone.
So abuse of power is always what abuse is.
always.
Control,
Mhm.
manipulation, power,
Correct.
domination. Whereas I
Mhm.
guess sort of compulsive sexual behavior is, if you like, the everyday sort of consensual
Most of
type
the
of
time.
sexual
Yeah.
behavior that's
Yep.
in extreme.
Yeah. Most of the time. Yeah. I mean, there's always overlaps on all those, but yeah.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And sort of predators, of course, are in the news. We see them in positions of power at the moment, which is quite disturbing, really.
Mm. Yes.
The wrong type of image we want to be giving out at the moment. Now, let's come back to writing books and the process of writing books, because there's things like narrative therapy and stuff like that. And there's a lot of psychological sort of research, and you will know this about how identity is developed in literate cultures through reading and writing, and it's very different to oral cultures. There aren't that many oral cultures left, really, but and how that has affected psychological growth. Could you talk about that a little bit in terms of the literate play behaviors and all that sort of stuff?
Now you're into neuropsychology, neurolinguistics.
Yeah.
If you can read, if you can stimulate the brain in other ways besides just hearing,
Mm.
you have more senses involved. Hearing primarily the word an oral society, you're going to hear the words. You might be in a setting where you can see the person delivering them, which is good. But in a society where you're reading, now your eyes are involved. Different parts of your brain are also
Right.
involved. So,
Yeah.
because hearing is auditory is one level to to see words and be able to read them and open up a whole thought and a whole idea in your
Yeah.
brain. That's you're using more parts of your brain,
And it's
which
really interesting that we don't really think about how extraordinary that is, because,
mm,
like, if we go back into time before universal literacy, i.e., before printing presses and translations of Bibles to indigenous or sort of, to English or to French or to German, etc. Prior to that, the written word was this sort of magical thing, wasn't it? That, and even the monks who were copying the Bibles and the religious, they didn't understand the words. They were just copying the images, and it wasn't they didn't have that mental process that you're discussing.
They don't. And another way to look at that, it's an interesting way, is in this nation, when we back in the days of of slaves, it was illegal for slaves to read because
Yes.
they would then revolt. But what they were really, if you look at it, what they were really saying is that these people would become more intelligent. They'd have more information available, and they would then be able to influence others maybe not to be remain as slaves or to act as slaves. So, without interpreting it, they understood those plantation people. They understood that if we let these people read, we're gonna lose them.
Yeah.
So,
And the mind does literally expand, doesn't it?
it
Wide
does. It
skills,
does.
without
Hmm.
a doubt. And it's also, I mean, I guess it's also very current and in terms of people trying to control what's on school curriculums and get rid of books and all this sort of stuff and control what you think. But also, I guess the sort of algorithmic control that exists online, the algorithm knows what we want and just pumps what we want into it. It doesn't challenge us to think and broaden ourselves.
That's a huge problem. I say that all the time. I said, they said, well, I'm learning from that. I said, well, no, because the algorithm now is learning about you and it learns what you want.
Yeah.
I said, that's not a horrible thing, but you have to learn how to control the algorithm. You
Mm.
have to expand what you're asking it.
Well, the
And
algorithm just wants to sell stuff to you. So it's going to
yeah,
figure
well,
out what
that's another
prejudices
part of it.
are, become
Exactly.
your friend by playing to your
Yeah.
prejudices, and
I'm
then
your
sell you a
buddy.
pair of
I'm
trainers,
your
right?
buddy. And that's not my hand in your pocket. I
That's
don't know what you're
exactly
talking
right.
about.
Exactly right. Whereas a true critical friend will go, I'm not sure I do agree. And that's what literature can do for us.
And that's exactly what it should do. What you're
Right.
saying is what I've always said is that we need to be challenged. We formulate an idea, but an idea is only it has a shelf life.
Mm.
All of everything that we do has a shelf life.
Yeah.
So we have to challenge it and then be able to say, okay, here's new information,
So what was it
facts.
like for you writing your first book, apart from hard work and all that sort of stuff, but as a sort of creative process, a psychological process?
what I wanted to do, and it's really what came out in the work, is I wanted to make sure that what I was giving people was not my opinion about something. I wanted to
Okay,
present facts. I wanted to teach them how to be honest with themselves, what fact finding was about, how to take their emotions and push them back a little bit and be able to get your intellects engaged. I talk a lot about that, staying in the moment,
sure,
uh, doing all those kinds of things. The first book had 36 chapters of all all different kinds of things that had to be addressed. But what I do is, as opposed to giving I give no opinions, or if I say something, I'd say, well, the author says, but other than that, I don't give opinions. I keep my chapters short and concise,
sure.
and I give them action steps.
Yeah.
So let's be functional about what we're doing here. Try this, and you're going to see some
And in
changes.
some ways it is. I mean, obviously there's a reality and an emotional sort of reality. So the emotional reality, I guess, is something along the lines, I can't hide. I'm putting it out there. I'm putting a bit of me out there, and then people can tell me whether that's right or wrong. And that must be, I mean, even if you're very confident as a human being, that's still got some vulnerability attached to
Oh,
it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing you want to. When I work with people, I say you're afraid of being vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know, let's tear it apart. In anything you do, let's tear it apart. If I put this out there, and not to be personal things about it, but just my opinion about something, someone may react to it. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
I'm not going to come and get you, but you may have to pull back and say, "Oh, I was wrong." And if that hurts you, that's concerning. You should be able to say, "Oh, I didn't think about that. Great point. Thank you."
Yeah.
And then expand on it. Now that's learning.
And I think I don't want to over egg this particular statement, but there is some truth in this in my own lived experience that when I faced the fears is when I've grown most as a human being. Not always. I mean, there's a lot of to be said for just having a nice bath and
Yeah.
some bubble bath and relaxing and chilling out. There's a lot to be said for that. But in terms of those times when life has changed, maybe in ways I hadn't wanted it to, but I've had to adapt to that change. I think have been some of the most challenging, but also most rewarding times of my life in terms of growth.
They are. Someone said to me, "How do I know when I'm growing?" And I
Yeah,
said,
it hurts.
"Here's the answer. You're uncomfortable."
That's right.
Yeah, but I don't want to be uncomfortable. I
Yeah,
said, "Well, then you'll limit how much you grow. Your growth
that's right.
will be limited by your willingness to challenge yourself." But I'm a person that loves to define things. So I said, "Okay, you're going to be uncomfortable. Let's define what uncomfortable means for you."
Mm,
And, sometimes it ties back to something in the past. Sometimes it's a little bit more
exactly.
ego involved
Yeah.
than we would like. I said, let's look at that and break it down and make you not so concerned about being uncomfortable. Because if you just focus on I'm uncomfortable, that's going to be that's your growth killer. But if it's I'm going to be uncomfortable, but there's light at the end of that tunnel. I'm going there.
Mm.
And that's my route. I just have to travel through this, and I'm going to be just a little different. I'm going to know a little more.
Yeah.
Are
And
you ready?
earlier on today, for example, I was with my personal trainer in the gym, and it's his job to push me physically beyond where I think I can go, and my body hurts from it, all that sort of stuff. But I know that that's just part of the growth of my muscles and my body and my functioning. And it seems to me that that's a good analogy for the growth of our minds and our personality.
It's interesting you said that. I often use that
Do
analogy. I mean,
you?
I'm a person that's been working out, if you will, since I'm
Yeah,
a teenager. And at 7, I have a gym. We have basements here. I have a gym in the basement. And,
yeah,
and so, but I always tell people, go challenge yourself.
yeah,
No one says you have to run in and get yourself crazy. If you did, let's say repetitions, you only did 5, that's okay.
yeah,
Tomorrow, try to do 6. That's all. The
yeah.
next time, at least stay at 6 and maybe try 7 and get to a point where you become comfortable challenging yourself.
Mm. And that, I guess, is true in the nature of humans as social animals, that it's important that we challenge ourselves in terms of our social environment, I guess.
Correct. Correct. When we learn to challenge ourselves, we don't fear challenges from someone else.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
absolutely. And I'm just thinking as well about this whole thing of diversity and neurodiversity, because these words diversity are in the news in negative ways and have been sort of, but as a psychologist, which is the world that's healthier, the one where everybody's like us, or the one where we're having to adapt to difference?
I think growth is motivated by change.
Right.
The issue we have is that we don't approach it on any side. The growers, if you will, or the stagnant. We don't approach it. We try to force things on each other. We go into modes of change without a plan. You
Yeah.
know, I'm a stickler for people saying when I work with people, what is your plan? We want to change. You come to counseling. I have a plan.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why would you come here? So I think that it's a balance between the old and the new. It always is. I always say life is like a pendulum. You know, it wants to be balanced, and we keep pushing it, and that's okay to push it, but then we have to let it come back to center so we catch
Exactly.
our breath, look at it, assess what we're doing, and make the necessary changes. We have a tendency to push that, and we want to keep it
Yeah,
that
it's
way.
like when you're doing reps in the gym, you do have to put the weights down and let your body recover a little bit.
Exactly. And that's the way life is. We want to institute small changes. Drastic changes never hold. They never take hold.
No,
They're
I
not meant to
agree.
hold them
Small
up
changes that can be repeated are more effective than big
and
changes that
lead to the
can't be
bigger
repeated.
steps. Exactly.
It's that progressive nature again, isn't it?
Yes.
Progressive change rather than big
Right.
change. Um,
Right.
so we are, because I know you have to go to a meeting because of me getting the time scale, the time zones wrong, and I'm aware that we're running out of time. I could just keep going, but I do want to get to the latest insane project of yours, which is the latest book. It's sort of, you haven't learned your lesson yet. You're still writing them. What is
I'm
wrong with
still
you?
I'm still beating all of you up with my words.
So tell us the title of your latest book.
The last book is the Fix Your Internal Language Handbook.
So say
Uh,
that again.
the Fix Your Internal Language
So the
Handbook.
Fix Your Internal Language book.
Yeah,
So,
it
and what
is.
on earth does that mean?
I mean, well, people like to call it self-talk. It's what we talk to ourselves in our brain. And,
Doesn't
it's
that mean there's something wrong with us if we're talking to
not a
ourselves?
bit. All of us do it. I
Okay.
love to ask people, do you talk to yourself?
Yeah.
Never. I said, well,
Never.
you
You
think with
look me up if I
language.
admit it.
How does your brain work if you don't think, if you don't use
That's right.
language?
Exactly. Exactly.
So of course you do. All I want to do is help you create a more powerful intellectual experience. Phase out the negative stuff because a lot of that internal language is negative. I'm
So
mad
some
at this
people talk
person.
about the internal critic. Freud talked about the superego and
Oh,
harsh
yes.
superego and all that sort of stuff. What does all that mean? That sort of stuff.
Well, what it means essentially, when you boil it all down, it simply says that we develop a persona, who we think we are and who the rest of the world is. And then everything comes in and we deal with it with language. And we talk about it in our minds or we plan. Sometimes we have conversations with people who aren't even there.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
We all do. And if I say
Absolutely.
that, 9 out of 10 people will say, "No way, are you?" I'll go to them and say what I'm going to say. And I said,
Yeah.
"No,
Yeah.
you
Yeah. Yeah.
really won't. You'll at least rehearse it in your brain before you get
Oh,
there."
yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So I want people to be able to understand that there's a positive way to think and there's a negative. The negative is going to come on automatically. You're not even going to know you're in it.
Hmm.
All of a sudden, you're in this conversation. Sometimes you don't
And
even.
does the negative come from a specific relationship or experience, or is it just something that would happen anyway?
I think it's a developmental process that,
Okay.
it doesn't just one day we went negative, unless, there's a break of some sort. But basically, it's what we've always done. First of all, we've always talked to ourselves. So that's why we don't know we do it because it's natural. It's always been there. It's autopilot, if you will.
Yeah.
And then events shape that communication just like they shape everything else.
Hmm.
So if we're brought up in a very positive environment, we tend to be more positive in that. If we've had trauma, if we've had bad experiences, then it changes a bit. And if we keep that going internally, not only may we continue to experience bad things, we may actually instigate them, and we don't know that. And we all look at it. We have those
So is
people,
there a relationship then between what we think and what we do?
and that's the next part. If we think it, somewhere along the line, we're going to do something
Okay.
it the way we're thinking of it, or our behavior will move in that direction.
Okay.
So, and
And so
negative
that
people,
behavior either confirms or challenges those thoughts, I guess.
typically it confirms them until someone else challenges or
Right.
some event challenges. And
Yeah.
then when we're challenged, we either going to acquiesce and move back and say, let me think about it, or we're going to push forward and fight. It's, fight or flight comes in there.
Yeah.
So,
But are you suggesting then that we have more power over that internal dialogue than
we
we
do.
think that we have?
Now we're back to just what you and I were talking before, conscious thought.
Okay.
That's how we control what we think. If we say, all right, I'm going to think about this. I want to have a plan. This is really, that guy really made me mad. I need to have a plan to deal with him, and I'm going to think about this or maybe talk to someone about it. That's one thing. If it just goes into our mind, I'm going to kill that guy, and you just get all this negative stuff, and now you start having negative conversations. Well, that doesn't go anywhere. And so how do you affect change in that? Is that, if it begins and you're negative, you stop it. You say, no, I'm not going to think about that.
Okay.
Make a decision. I'm going to think about this, develop that thought.
So would you sort of work on the thoughts that are not very helpful for you, that type of thing, and
Yeah.
write
When
them
I work with
down
people,
or make a note
I,
of them?
I have people define those thoughts. When they
Okay.
finally get to the point that they're there, I say, let's define them. Let's talk about that conversation.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what you're thinking and how you're doing it. And
Yeah.
let's and we
Well, it sounds like the book is very practical and helpful. It's going
yeah,
to help people understand their internal process and then work out a plan to change in ways that make them more effective, if you like.
correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
That's
does
what
that sort of not just effective in the world, but does that developing that capacity mean we feel better?
Absolutely. I have a young lady comes in and she said she does this, and she said, I realized about an hour after I was into this thing, I was exhausted
Yes. Yeah.
because again, your brain operates, it's your neurology. It doesn't just stay here. It goes through your entire body. Your nerves go through your body, your muscles. Your brain controls all that. So if you're feeding it with negative, intense energy, you're going to use up more energy and faster.
Yeah.
So will you be happier? Yes.
And it's interesting. I mean, there is a thing called positive psychology, which you will know lots about. But it seems to me there's another thing, which is some people argue you should just have positive thoughts all the time, but you don't seem to be saying that.
Well, and no one does.
Right.
We like to teach that. Negative thoughts just come in, and I just tell people, know that they're coming. That's like saying, gee, everyone in my world is positive. Well, we know the next person comes over might be negative and so we know they're coming. We know when we drive our car, somebody's running the stop sign or the whatever. We know this. So
Right.
to say, well, it'll never happen, I don't, because I don't want it to. No, what we do is say the thoughts are going to come back.
Yeah.
My brain is alive and dynamic. It will happen. So I have a plan that every time it does this, I redirect it.
Yeah.
I stop the thought, I redirect it, I develop a new thought.
Yeah.
What are we doing? We're training our brain to stop negativity, move into positive
Great.
energy, positive thinking. And we know that it's going to be there for the rest of our lives. So we'll keep doing this. And
Yeah,
this,
because it's habitual. We can choose.
correct.
I don't have a big debate with myself about brushing my teeth anymore. I did when I was a kid, but now I've just been doing it for so long, it's fine. It's automatic.
Exactly. And and that's a great theme. When we talk about change, we talk about evolution and development. It's all about the ability to put new things in our life to train our brain. Our brain is a learning machine. I keep saying those words.
Yeah.
It wants to learn. So we keep on training. And people say, well, it's so hard to do the positive. I said, let me give you a little proof here. You've been thinking negative all of these years. Yes, I have. You trained your brain. So you proved to yourself you could do it.
That's
All you're
right.
doing
That's a
now
great way
is
of saying it, Faust.
right.
Love
Now
that.
we're just going to change
I
the
love
training
that. Yeah,
program. That's all.
exactly. That's a beautiful reframing. And it's a beautiful place in which to stop. I know you have to go because you've got another meeting. Before you go, though, tell us the how people get hold of the book. Have you got a website? Where can they buy it?
Yeah, you can. The best place to find me, is on my website, faustruggiero.com.
Yeah,
All the books are there. But they're excerpts from all the books, so people can actually come and say, "Oh, that's how he's writing it. I like that. I don't like it. Whatever they feel." Um, media interviews are there. There's a contact link if people want to contact me, and I do get back to people.
Super. Well, that's fantastic. I know you've got to run off. I've kept you a little bit longer than.
Oh,
Thank you
that's
so
okay.
much for your flexibility today. I really appreciate you staying and joining me. It's been great to catch up with you, and I wish you well. You stay there while we finish, folks. I hope you found that as useful and interesting as I do. Get hold of Faust's website. We'll make sure there's a link for people when the show goes out. Read the book. He's got a lot of. I mean, I tease him about the books, but he's a clever guy, and they're really helpful books. And we all learn in different ways. I'm more of this interactive sponge learner. Other people need a book and all that sort of stuff. So any way we can get good psychology out there to people is always making the world a better place, as far as I'm concerned. So bye bye for now, folks, and I will catch you all at the next episode of the Wellbeing Show. And thank you for joining us.